Announcing the arrival of Yang Berhormat Dato Sri Mustapa bin Mohamed, Minister in Prime Minister's Department Economic Malaysia, accompanied by Yang Berbahagia Dato Yatimah binti Sarjiman, Deputy Director General Sectoral EPU, and Yang Berbahagia Dato Fazlur Rahman Zainuddin, Chief Strategy and Ventures Officer, representing President and Chief Executive Officer DNB, and our fellow guests of honor. Please remain standing for our national anthem, Negaraku. Thank you. Please be seated. Yang Berhormat Datuk Seri Mustapa Mohamed, Minister in Prime Minister Department Economic Malaysia, Yang Berbahagia Datuk Yatimah Sarjiman, Deputy Director General Sectoral Economic Planning Unit EPU, Yang Berbahagia Datuk Fazlur Rahman Zainuddin, Chief Strategy and Venture Officer, representing President, Chief Executive Officer Tenaga Nasional Berhad TNB, Yang Berusaha Tuan Haji Teknologis Abdul Razid Daud, Chief Executive Officer Suruhanjaya Tenaga ST, Top Management of TNB, officials from Ministry and Government agencies, and all participants here today. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good evening to everyone present today and join us online via WebEx. Welcome to the SDG7 Seminar, a journey towards energy transition. To start our ceremony today, I am very pleased to invite Al-Fadil Ustaz Fajuri Mamat, Senior Manager Islamic Affairs, TNB, to lead the recitation of Dua. Tafaddal mashkura.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Wa qala rabbukum ud'uni astajib lakum. A'udzu billahi minasy syaithanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulil amin. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Ya Allah, ya Tuhan kami, segala puji-pujian hanya untuk-Mu. Selawat dan salam ke atas junjungan besar kami Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, keluarga serta para sahabat baginda yang dimuliakan. Allahumma ya Hayyum ya Dzal Jalali wal Ikram. Ya Allah, ya Tuhan kami, sesungguhnya Engkau Maha mengetahui. Kami berhimpun di sini semata-mata untuk mencari keridhaan-Mu, bagi meneroka ilmu-Mu yang sangat luas. Untuk itu, ya Allah, Berkati dan rahmatilah program seminar Sustainable Development Goal yang diadakan ini. Mudah-mudahan segala urusan kami ini, ya Allah, kerana sesungguhnya memudahkan yang pada itu amat mudah bagimu. Allahumma ya muzilal mubarakah. Ya Allah, ya Tuhan kami, bimbinglah kami ke arah kejayaan dan kecemerlangan dalam setiap urusan dan pekerjaan. Berilah kami kekuatan azam dan keyakinan agar segala ilmu yang diperolehi di dalam majlis ini dapat direalisasikan. Seterusnya memberi kebaikan kepada kami, masyarakat, negara dan ummah. Ya Allah, ya Tuhan kami, kurniakanlah kepada kami iman yang mantap, ilmu yang bermanfaat, rezeki yang berkat, anak-anak serta zuriat keturunan yang cemerlang, kehidupan yang bahagia, usia yang berkat, doa yang mustajab, hajat yang tertunai, kesihatan yang sempurna, dan keselamatan di dunia dan di akhirat. Ya Allah, ya Tuhan kami, jadikanlah perhimpunan kami ini perhimpunan yang dirahmati, dan jadikanlah perpisahan kami selepas ini perpisahan yang diberkati. Allahumma rabbana hab lana min azwajina wa dzurriyyatina qurrata ayun waj'alna lil muttaqina imama. Allahumma tahhir qulubana minan nifaq wa a'malana minar riya wa alsinatana minal kazib wa a'yunana minal khiyana fa innaka ta'lamu kha'inatal a'yun wa ma tukhfis sudur. Allahumma rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina adzaban nar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Taqabbalallahu minkum.
Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alamin. Alhamdulillah, and thank you, Ustaz Fajuri Mamat, for the dua recitation just now. Let us together hope that today's program runs smoothly and achieve its goals for the sake of joint efforts to achieve a more sustainable future for the next generation. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express our appreciation to our guests of honor and everyone that are here today in this auditorium, and wherever you are joining us online via our WebEx platform. The objective of this SDG7 Seminar on affordable and clean energy focuses on Malaysia's efforts toward affordable, reliable, and sustainable and clean energy. In line with this target, and to encourage positive national discourse on the subject, TMB collaborates with Economic Planning Unit, Prime Minister Department, EPU, in hosting this seminar. This session will, among other things, discuss on matters such as energy transition and how to manage the energy trilemma, the pathway to this transition, the critical enablers, and the various ways to move Malaysia forward to this goal through public and private collaboration. The seminar seeks to highlight the collective rules and effort across the public and the private sectors in developing and supporting the country's United Nations Sustainable Development Goal SDG targets. So without any further ado, it now gives us a great pleasure to welcome YB Dato Sri Mustapa Mohamed, Minister in Prime Minister Department Economic, to give his keynote speech. Please welcome.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, salam keluarga Malaysia. Saudara pengacara majlis, Bahagia Dato Fazlur Rahman, Chief Strategy and Ventures Officer mewakili CEO TNB, Dato Yatimah daripada EPU Deputy DG, Saudara Razib, CEO Suruhanjaya Tenaga, distinguished panelist speakers, seterusnya tuan-tuan dan puan sekalian. Pertama saya ucap terima kasih dijemput oleh penganjur. Penganjurnya ialah TNB dan EPU untuk bercakap sepatah dua kata sebelum seminar bermula. Jadi saya tak boleh cakap panjang sangat. By coincidence, hari ini boleh dikatakan SDG Day untuk saya lah. Saya baru selesai dengan SDG 11 berkaitan dengan Sustainable Cities. Kita kunjungan daripada Dato Sri Maimunah Sharif, who was formerly Mayor of Seberang Perai and also Penang. Sekarang ini dia boss of UN Habitat in Nairobi. She's on a visit to Malaysia. Jadi tadi kita bincang lebih sejam berkaitan dengan SDG 11. Hari ini SDG pagi tadi, petang SDG 7. Jadi hari ini hari SDG lah. Jadi untuk makluman, PIPU telah menganjurkan beberapa webinar berkaitan SDG. Ini adalah yang ke-11, 12 sorry, sudah 11. Jadi banyaklah kami cakap pasal SDG, tapi belum main lagi lah, kena terus bercakap lagi. Jadi terima kasih sekali lagi kepada pihak tenaga kerana bergabung tenaga dengan EPU untuk menjayakan webinar ini. Ladies and gentlemen, today's program is a collaboration between EPU and TNB. TNB, of course, is the most important player in the energy sector in Malaysia. As you're all aware, energy is a critical growth engine for the Malaysian economy. It is the battery that our economy runs on and contributes significantly to our GDP. It is intimately connected to the industrial, commercial, and family life of our country. Ladies and gentlemen, the Malaysian government, through long-term socio-economic planning, both through short, medium, and long-term plans, have ensured high electricity access for all Malaysians across the board. Today, about 98% of Malaysians have access to electricity, and we hope to reach 99% by the year 2025. This is nothing to pat ourselves on the back for. It is the bare minimum. We have come a long way since independence, but we have to be more ambitious. Today, the current challenge facing the energy sector is to make affordable and clean energy accessible to all, and to shift away from a heavy reliance on fossil fuels. Ladies and gentlemen, the Malaysian government appreciates the delicacy, the difficulty, the challenges of managing the competing aims of the energy trilemma, namely energy security, equity, and sustainability. We are also party to a plethora of international commitments, including the Paris Agreement. Concerns on large GHG emissions from the energy sector have resulted in renewed calls for transformation. Malaysia has made a commitment to achieve net zero GHG emission by the year 2050. This aspiration warrants a whole-of-nation approach, especially with stakeholders in the energy sector. Ladies and gentlemen, global energy transition will create a range of challenges and opportunities as well for the energy sector, as well as the broader Malaysian economy. There's a need to have policies and regulations in place in order to make the most out of this transition to a cleaner energy regime. That is why the National Energy Policy, which will run from now until the year 2040, will be launched in the next few weeks. This policy will hopefully boost investment flows to advance our sustainable development goals. This policy will also contribute to a higher, better quality of life for all Malaysians, both in terms of a stronger economy, a greener and more sustainable community. Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin to reduce our dependence on coal, we should utilize alternatives such as renewable energy as well as new energy. Malaysia has revised our national renewable energy capacity target, as you know, from 20% to 31% by the year 2025. Our contribution to installed capacity mix is projected to increase from 31% to 40% by the year 2035 in the Malaysian Renewable Energy Roadmap. Moreover, carbon capture, utilization and storage, or CCS technology for carbon mitigation should also be explored, and if found feasible, must be embraced. The government is pleased to see the strong commitment of the private sector in embracing clean energy and green growth. TNB Sustainability Pathway 2050 and Petronas aspiration to achieve net zero carbon emission by the year 2050 for instance, are in sync with the government's sustainable development targets. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not an island. We are not alone. We acknowledge the need to strengthen international cooperation to ensure universal access to affordable and reliable energy. We need clarity in our energy agenda. We need to ensure the lights are always on, and we need to ensure that our system remains robust and resilient in managing disruptions during the global transition of energy. But of course, there will be cost implications, including to SMEs, the poor, and systemic changes which we need to address to navigate this very challenging transition. Sekali lagi saya ucap terima kasih. Let me congratulate everyone for coming together. I understand there's about 300 in this hall, another 700 throughout the country. There are both local and international participants. I'm pleased to know that there are at least 1,000 people in this webinar. This goes to show that this agenda is catching up slowly among all Malaysians. Indeed, SDGs are very much part of our national policy agenda. It has been embedded in our 5-year plans, the budget, and other policy documents. This is important for the survival of our people and indeed the planet. We have experienced in recent months a number of mishaps, a number of catastrophes, not only in Kuala Lumpur, Lemah Kelang, also in Baling, in Yan, and other places. These are some examples nearer to home, how tough things are, and if we do not get together, if we do not put our act together in concert, we are going to face a lot of challenges in future. In that context, I appeal to everyone, government, private sector, big companies like TMB, CSOs and others, school children, teachers, lecturers, let us work together. Firstly, to enhance awareness on the importance of this agenda, to spread the message that you either do this or you perish. The planet will be gone if we are not careful. This indeed is very urgent. And the more we do in terms of enhancing awareness, the more we do in terms of implementing the lofty goals. We have lots of beautiful documents and policies. The challenge, of course, is in implementing those goals and objectives. So once again, let's work together as one nation in the context of whole of nation approach to achieve our common goal of achieving not only high income status, but in building a prosperous and sustainable nation. Sekali lagi saya ucap terima kasih kepada TMB kerana bergabung tenaga dengan EPU dalam menjayakan program ini. As I said, kita dah ada 11 semua sekali on SDG. Ini yang ke-12 dan going forward ada lagi yang kita akan laksanakan dan mungkinlah yang paling besar lah. Ya. Jadi saya ucap tahniah sekali lagi. I would like to congratulate all of you for turning up in full force to support this very important agenda. On that note, sekali lagi saya ucap terima kasih dan saya dengan segala sukacitanya merasmikan Sustainable SDG Seminar on Affordable and Clean Energy, a Journey Towards Energy Transition. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, YB Dato Sri. Now I would like to invite YB Dato Sri Mustapa Mohamed to remain on stage and to be accompanied by Yang Berbahagia Dato Yatimah Sarjiman, Deputy Director General Sectoral Economic Planning Unit EPU, to join YB Dato Sri up front to deliver token of appreciation to our panelists and presenter. Our first panelist, we would like to invite Dato Fazlur Rahman Zainuddin, Chief Strategy and Venture Officer, Tenaga Nasional Berhad. Next, please welcome Tuan Syed Malik Faisal Syed Mohamed, Head of Business Development Renewable Energy Gentari. Our third panelist, please welcome Ms. Gan Pek Chuan, Head of Sustainable and Resilient Development UNDP, Country Office for Malaysia, Singapore and Brunei. And next, please welcome Mr. Stephen Aroke, Council Member for the Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers, FMM. And last but not least, we would like to invite Tuan Haji Technologies Abdul Razib bin Daud, Chief Executive Officer Suruhanjaya Tenaga ST. Next, I would like to invite Yang Berbahagia Dato' Yatimah Sarjiman to deliver a very special token of appreciation to YB Dato' Seri Mustapa Mohamed for being here with us today. Thank you Yang Berbahagia Dato' Yatimah Sarjiman for doing the honour of presenting the token of appreciation on behalf of TNB and EPU. Now, we want to invite our guests of honor to join our participants here today to stand together for a photography session. Please welcome. We would like to invite all participants to come a little bit center of our auditorium. We do have white lens over here. Due to technology, we can have everyone in the picture, but a little bit closer just to show how good we are together here today. Alright, a round of applause for all participants here today and our guests of honor. Again, we would like to thank our guests of honor to join our opening ceremony for seminar SDG7 today, and we are announcing the departure of YB Dato' Seri Mustapa bin Mohamed, accompanied by Yang Berbahagia Dato' Yatimah Sarjiman. Again, a round of applause for our guests of honor. Alright, we are going to continue our seminar today. Are you guys ready? To all our participants on Webex as well, if you guys ready, please comment down below. I would like to hear some voice and noise from our participants in the auditorium today. Are you guys ready? Alright, let us kick off our seminar today. One of the highlights of our event today is a panelist session from various agencies to discuss on Sustainable Development Goal number 7, which is one of the 17 SDG established by the United Nations General Assembly in 2015. It aims to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable and modern energy to all. So without any further ado, please welcome on stage our moderator for today, Ms. Nur Ayuni binti Zainal Abidin, Principal Assistant Director, Energy Division, Economic Planning Unit, EPU, with the topic Collaboration Towards the Future of Clean Energy in Malaysia. Ms. Ayuni, the stage is yours.
Testing, mic 1, 2, 3. Am I loud and clear? Mr. Hall and those on WebEx. Thank you, Encik Haikal, our MC for today, for the kind introduction. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very warm welcome and good afternoon to everybody, whether you are in this beautiful auditorium Abu Zarim or whether you are tuning in through our WebEx platform. Welcome, every one of you, to SDG7 Seminar, Affordable and Clean Energy, a journey towards energy transition, co-organized by the Economic Planning Unit, Prime Minister's Department, and Tenaga Nasional Berhad. Now, on behalf of EPU's Energy Division, I am Ayuni, and I'll be moderating our panel session entitled Collaboration Towards the Future of Clean Energy in Malaysia. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are also delighted to inform that our session today are joined by approximately 1,000 attendees here in the hall as well as on WebEx. So thank you, all of you, for supporting this seminar. And also thank you to EPU and TNB for making this seminar possible, as well as for putting up an impressive list of panelists whom I'm honored to introduce in a short while. But first, let us have some scene setting and refresher on what it means by energy transition. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the global community, including Malaysia, we are still reeling from the aftermath of COVID-19, couple that with the prolonged Russia and Ukraine conflict, which have disrupted the stability of energy supply. Now, these events, black swan as they may be, have propelled the energy transition at a speed that is hastier than before. Now, unlike the conventional revolution in history that have been a story of renewal from one generation to another, energy transition is a story of replacement. You know, years ago, humans used burn woods to cook and heat houses. Then we used coal, and then we found oil, and then we used gas. All of these are the items that we've had in our energy mix inventory. But today, fast forward to 2022, and we look all around the world is asking us to change this energy mix to clean energy sources. And because if you don't do it, the climate will be impacted. Perhaps there'll be no more climate, we have to move to Mare, like how Elon Musk wants us to do. Now, in other words, we are here standing at a pivotal time to radically transform our energy mix. And can Malaysia do this alone? The answer, as Dato Sri Mustapa Mohamed has mentioned just now, it's not, because no man is an island. So we require a whole of nation approach. We need to mobilize money, we need talent, we need technologies, but above all, we need support, policies, and leadership. And to unpack all of these complications, challenges of a massive undertaking for a country as young as ours, where we need to align our policies, set the rules, collaborate, and more importantly, find the money and buy the technology. So the question today, how are the panelists going to unpack and share with us based on their expertise? So, without further ado, allow me to invite our first panelist, Yang Berbahagia, Dato Fazlur Rahman Zainuddin, Chief Strategy and Ventures Officer, TNB, who have held this post since 1st January 2021. Please welcome Dato. Dato leads the development and implementation of TNB's long-term strategy, including energy transition and ESG, through TNB Sustainability Pathway 2050 and Reimagining TNB, among others. Now, welcome. Thank you, Dato, for accepting our invitation. Next, I am pleased to welcome Mr. Syed Malik Faisal Syed Mohamed, the Head of Business Development, Renewable Energy, Gentari, the newest kid on Petronas block, responsible to chart our national oil company foray into clean energy solution business. Now, Mr. Malik holds a first-class honours degree in mechatronics from King's College and was formerly a Kazana and Cambridge scholar. Welcome, Mr. Malik. Now, our third panelist, the only rose accompanying another rose here, is Ms. Gan Pek Chuan, the Head of Sustainable and Resilient Development, UNDP Country Office for Malaysia, Singapore and Brunei. She has 20 years of experience on integrating environmental agenda and best practices in climate change, biodiversity, land degradation and pollution, and weaving them into public policy, institutional planning and business operation. Welcome, Ms. Gan. And lastly, the policy will not be complete without our business, without our company voicing their opinion as well. So please welcome Mr. Stephen Aroki, Council Member of the Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers, who is also the Chairman of FMM Energy and Chairman of FMM Negeri Sembilan Branch, my beloved home state. Now, I'm certain that our panelists are eager to begin the session and share their insights to make our session today livelier. So just brief introduction on how the session will be. There'll be 4 rounds, and I'll be timing the session to allow for a robust and comprehensive discussion and from everybody. But probably before we go on, if I may invite each panelist for a brief introduction for roughly about 1 minute to introduce yourself. Please welcome.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ayuni. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a good afternoon, everybody, in this hall as well as online. Quite honored to be here to speak to you on the subject of the clean energy. Just a quick introduction. In Tenaga Nasional, we view clean energy as one of those important shifts that Tenaga Nasional has to take. As a power utility company, one of the largest emissions in the country is coming from our sector, followed by the transport sector. We know that as a company, the spotlight is very much on us. It's not just amongst regulators, government, etc., but also investors. Yeah. And that's actually also something that is very, very important to us. Money. Yeah? Money is following now, moving towards clean sources. So, in line with that, Tenaga Nasional, as of last year, we announced our sustainability pathway 2050 towards an aspiration of net zero emissions. Yeah? Now, 2050 may be a very long way to come. Yeah? So, with that, because of that, we've set interim targets in 2035 with the goal of reducing our emissions intensity by 35%, and also in doing so, in order to do so, reduce our dependence or coal capacity by 50%. Yeah? And this will take us towards 2050, where we will be coal-free as well. Yeah? There are a lot of challenges, we believe, along this pathway. Yeah? A lot of work to be done, a lot of questions that needs to be answered. Yeah? And I think we believe that as we work together with various parties, we know we can't do it alone. Yeah? So I will put my hand up right now and say that Tenaga Nasional can't do it alone. I can't do it alone. We need to work together with various parties, people who have technologies, people who are actually from different parts of the value chain, etc., to be able to get us to the net zero aspirations that we set ourselves. Additionally to that, as we talk about transitioning ourselves towards a net zero, another important aspect of doing so is engaging the public at large. Yeah? Because we ourselves are at the supply side of the energy. What's equally important is actually the demand side, you know, the people, yeah, the consumers of energy. So very important on this part is actually engaging and empowering our customers. That's a key theme. And not only that, increasing the awareness around energy, around climate action, around efficiency and clean energy going forward. I think this is what YB Dato Sri actually mentioned just now. We're having a lot of this kind of conversations going on in order to actually increase the awareness, and that's actually what we are doing right now. And happy to take further questions later on, but that's just a little bit of a context in terms of how we are taking this going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato. Thank you for mentioning the call for us to work together as well, and that there is also a need to balance between supply and demand side. Now, Mr. Malik, could I further the question to ask, in Petronas' experience through Gentari, what are the challenges that you see faced by Malaysia as far as energy transition is concerned, and how can we prepare for this shift, whether we are consumer, policymaker, politician, or even as a company, national oil company?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi, and a very good afternoon. Thank you, Puan Ayuni, and also the organizer, APU and TNB. Perhaps I can start first with a bit on introduction. You probably saw the word Jantari, then maybe I'm sure a lot of people will be, very anxious to know what it's all about. So Petronas started in 2019, we started our new statement of purpose, which is progressive energy and solutions partner, enriching life for sustainable future. Now, with that statement of purpose, in November 2020, we announced our aspiration to achieve net zero carbon NZC 50 by 2050. So that somehow created a new, I would say, a pace, and in order for us to grow this new energy segment at scale and at pace, Petronas has developed or established a clean energy entity called Jantari. It was announced in June this year. Actually, Jantari came from the two Malay, both English and Malay words. Gen coming from the word to generate, or even can be generation. And Tari came from the Malay word lestari. So our ambition to ensure that we're able to provide the world sustainably sourced and responsibly develop energy for the society in the whole today and progress towards the future. And the three main, I would say, business that Jantari will be focusing will be renewable energy, which we have formerly known as new energy before this in Petronas. Hydrogen business, particularly focusing on the clean hydrogen. And last but not least, green mobility, particularly looking into EVs and other green mobility solutions for customers. Now, that is what were the three business that we'll start first. Obviously, we will add on in future if there are other technology or business models that we can develop under this whole clean energy portfolio. So what we're doing here is actually very, I would say, aligned with even my colleague Dato from TNB mentioned about TNB aspiration towards net zero carbon by 2050. And also these are aligned with the government targets of carbon neutrality by 2050 as well. And in accordance with the Paris Agreement, even with the recent COP26 development and so on, I think what we're doing here is actually aligning all the initiatives that we have to support, in this case, in particular, Malaysia ambitions toward 2050. Now, as I also like to echo what Dato mentioned, moving towards this is all about collaboration, partnership. That's key. Even Petronas alone, we won't be able to do it by ourselves. We have to involve various stakeholders, government, with regard to policies, industry partners, customers and so on, to understand, because this new business or within this new energy transition, business is very dynamic. You have to be more agile in this. Hence, I think the needs to collaborate with various partners is important in this case. Now, just to answer your question with regard to challenges, right? I think different countries have different pace in managing this energy transition. If you look at Malaysia, I think the key, as what Dato Sri Mustapa mentioned in his speech just now, is about the energy trilemma, balancing the affordability, energy security, as well as the sustainability of that. I think that is crucial for a country like Malaysia. And I think that there is no single, I would say, solution or single pathway for this. It has to be a form of mix from different kind of pathway in order for us to achieve those targets and aspiration. And obviously, I would say policy, which I believe we'll discuss further about the policy, is key in this. If you look at other markets who have embraced the energy transition, policy is key to enable certain deployment of technology, system business models. And I think this is something that the industry, other stakeholders, within Malaysia should able to, collaborate and discuss on how to support further, improve further our current policy in managing this energy transition. And I think that the second point in terms of challenges would be aligning those policies, because as even Dato mentioned just now, Dato mentioned about our renewable energy roadmap. So all those needs to be aligned to ensure that it can support our carbon neutrality target. We also have a plan for market liberalization. I think that's currently handled by My Power under KETSA. Those needs to be also taken into consideration or aligned with whatever can adopt to I would say, better echo Malaysia style rather than looking to other countries, right? To adopt the Malaysia style. And these are with regards to challenges which I think key and able to address other small, I would say, challenges. However, with all these challenges, there will be opportunities. Yeah. Okay. So I think with regards to opportunities, I would say having introduced or having developing strategies for this managing this energy transition, we will see that there are potential that we can bring foreign direct investment. If we have a clear policy on a clean energy, definitely we will get companies like RE100 or MNCs, the likes of Microsoft and so on, who have pledged certain targets. For example, Microsoft, they try to achieve 100% renewables by 2025 for all their data centers. So those companies, so those will, if we have a clear policy on clean energy, then it will attract those foreign direct investment coming to Malaysia. And at the same time, we are able to build more local skills in these technology or sectors, and areas that, now most of the, I would say, industry players probably more quite well known with solar. But what about other technology, energy storage, different business models? I think those are the things that we're able to provide more opportunity for Malaysia in this case. Yeah, I think I put that to hold now.
Thank you so much, Encik Malik, for a very, very deep insights on primarily the importance of collaboration, aligning policies. I think that's something for government to take a note as well. And as well as, like opportunities at time of challenges. And Ms. Gan, building up from Mr. Malik's point, because he did start by saying that different countries have different stories. So in addition to the challenges, could we gain from your experience through the AUNDP network? What are the challenges that have been faced by other countries elsewhere that could be a reflection and learning point for Malaysia in charting our own way forward for energy transition?
Okay, thank you, Ayuni, and also, thanks to our colleagues from TNB and also from Petronas for the very insightful sharing. As you know, United Nations Development Programme is the largest development agency within the United Nations system. We work in 170 countries and territories. We all have a very active portfolio of about 600 million in grants to cover 100 countries, including at least 5 billion in co-financing for clean energy transition and access to clean energy. At the same time, as you know, as one of the agencies, overall the United Nations has adopted, I'm sure most of you are aware, that in last year's General Assembly and also the High Level for Energy, Dialogue for Energy, we have adopted the Energy Compact across the countries, where UNDP has also made a pledge that we will, support at least 500 million people to have access to clean technology and clean energy. So we are doing this through our Sustainable Energy Hub. So our main areas of work can be divided into the one, digital innovation or transformation and AI. Namely is to use application of digital tools to enhance energy planning, project, especially investment project preparation and design, investment mobilization and also results tracking. Second, we provide thought leadership and also advocacy related to energy transition by sharing different countries' experience and unique knowledge. And third is innovative business models and financial mechanism. Fourth is about SDG integration. As you know, that the SDG consists of 17 of them. So working on SDG7 alone is not enough. You have to fully integrate across all the 17 SDGs. And finally, we do it through, of course, which is one of our core functions, is to provide policy advisories to the countries on clean energy, energy efficiency, investment-related policy, and also regulatory environment. So we did a lot of work on helping the countries to set up the ecosystems that consist of whether you need to amend or renew your current policy, or to set up a new policy, come up with a new regulatory or laws or legislations to ensure the countries are aligned with their clean energy transitions targets. So for Malaysia, I think there are some countries. Let me just share with you a report released by the World Economic Forum back in 2021. So each year they have come up with an index called the Energy Transition Index. And in this Energy Transition Index in 2021, all the top 10 countries, you can see mostly are coming from the developed countries. The top 3 are occupied by the Scandinavian countries. Number 1 is Sweden, followed by Norway and Switzerland. And what about the rest of the continent? There are only 2 countries which are within the 25 top countries. One is Uruguay at a ranking of 13, and the other one is our neighbor down south, Singapore, at 21. So this Energy Transition Index actually look at how well the countries in terms of its ecosystems, in terms of its investments, financing, and also how the consumer behavior and awareness, willingness to transition into cleaner energy. So based on this index, these are the countries that show. So which is why I would like to tell the story a bit or two about Uruguay. As you know, Uruguay 15 years back, they're still very dependent on oil. But now they are one of the success stories being told, widely, in the successful energy transition. They have shifted, they have shifted to 94.5% of its electricity from renewable energy in less than 10 years. And this is the story that was told back in 2015 at the Paris Agreement. So it's a combination of wind and solar. As you know, Uruguay is a pretty windy country, a lot of wind, which is why now wind has become their primary source of renewable energy. And most significant is the story behind is they have managed to stabilize the cost of this transition. Currently, the cost of access to paying the electricity now is even cheaper when they were relying on oil, fossil fuel. A lot more cheaper. So what makes the transition so successful without any crazy new technology or even new investment? According to the Uruguay counterparts and our colleagues in the government, they say their formula is actually, if you share with you, is actually pretty boring, they say. Because the formula is about clean decision making, very strong political and also policy commitment from the government, a very supportive regulatory environment for investments in clean energy, and very strong partnership between the government, public sector, and private sector. So just these 3 ingredients. So we sounds simple, but I think it's replicable also in Malaysia's context. So some of the challenges they do face in their initial years of transition is how to diversify the mix of renewable energy source. What they have put in place is they have put in a policy where to attract foreign investments, to set up all the wind farms throughout Uruguay is to give them a 20-year fixed price, a fixed energy price for these foreign investors, or operators, which is why now you see a lot of wind farms across the country in Uruguay. At the same time, there's still challenges, even though they have decarbonized most of the energy sector, they still have challenges, which is in the transport sector. I think this is somewhat similar to Malaysia. The transport sector is still very dependent on fossil fuel, very dependent. And they are now looking at energy mix, how to, as a whole, and try to add the transport sector into the whole energy application and energy use. So if you add in the mix is the renewable energy use across from the energy sector and the transport sector now attribute about 55% now, which is the renewable energy, and the rest is still oil, which is 45%. So now they are now going to look at whether they can replicate the same formula they have done for the energy transition and now apply that into the transport sector. So I think this is something similar. I don't say Uruguay is not the same with Malaysia. We are two very uniquely different countries. We are much larger. We have a larger population. And of course, we have also have much richer natural resources compared to Uruguay. But I think some of the lessons from these, policy and fiscal formula, perhaps we can consider, because we do, apart from energy sector, our transport sector is still very reliant on, on fossil fuel. And more importantly, I think in Malaysia context is most of our Malaysians, we are very used to enjoying a relatively low price of energy cost. So if you really want to make the transition, we all know, I'm sure most of us in this hall would know that in order to reach the 100% or our net zero emissions as early as 2050, there will be a stage where you will have to pay a higher energy cost before the pricing can be stabilized over the years. I mean, this is what we have seen in the solar panel. When we first launched a solar panel back in 20 years ago, it was so high cost. No one wants to install one up on our roof. But now it's so cheap. Yeah. So, but you see, whether the people of Malaysia is willing to make that, willing to pay. The willingness to pay, I think, is very important, which is why it's also important for, for all of us to consider some form of energy education or literacy, to mentally prepare our fellow Malaysians in this transition process. I'll just pause here and we'll continue.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Gan. Of all the points, I really love the part on price, because price is a very sensitive topic in Malaysia. Even as a consumer, I'm very sensitive to price. So because you mentioned about price, I specifically would like to ask Mr. Stephen. So we talk a lot about consumers' behavior, but we tend to forget that what the price that the consumers are paying also dependent on what the producers have to put in the input process. So based on this reflection from the three panelists, how would you respond to that as a business owner, as FMM, as manufacturers? Because COVID-19 has battered a lot of companies. So, and then come energy transition, it's not a bed of roses. So respond, Ms.
First, I thought my job is done because I told my fellow panelists, Minister has given us token so we can all go back. Yeah? Unfortunately, they still insist that I sit here and discuss. Okay, first I'd like to thank EPU and TNB for giving us this opportunity. I was more than willing for Ms. Gan to continue talking. I think in terms of higher energy costs, if there is a transition to cleaner energy and that energy cost is higher, it is a challenge to manufacturers because energy, manufacturers consume about 40% of the total energy in this country. More or less at that rate. So energy has a very direct impact on the cost. And Malaysia is an export-driven country. A lot of manufacturers are major exporters. So if there is a cost impact, there will be two. One is to the local consumers. Two is the competitiveness of Malaysia. So we cannot have our energy costs too far different from the countries around the region, because that makes us less competitive, which then reduces our exports, which then will have an impact on the local scenario in terms of employment and so forth. So in terms of challenges, there are many. I think I remember February we had a discussion with TNB on the 15th. We were talking about, okay, it's the pandemic. Pandemic has been a major challenge to manufacturing industry in terms of supply chain, in terms of labor, you know, and so forth. We are still having impacts from that pandemic until today, you know. So that is one challenge. Coming back to that discussion, I think February 15, we talked about energy, we talked about coal prices. We said, okay, coal prices at the highest at 254. I remember talking to your CEO. 2 weeks later, that scenario changed because now coal prices are in the region of 400, 419. So first, I'd like to thank the government for subsidizing this pass-through at 5.8 billion because that's supposed to be there should be a surcharge for these 6 months. And the next 6 months is going to be another challenge because there should be another further pass-through which is higher than these 6 months. So manufacturing industry, I think overall faces a lot of challenges, and energy costs being one of the major ones will always be a challenge to us. Of course, like everybody in the region, we also look at renewable energy. I think Minister asked me just now when he was giving me the token, so Stephen, SME support that. Of course we support the SDG7. We want to go through that and collaborate. I think we have very good collaboration with TNB. We work very, very closely. We also have very good collaboration with ST. So we try to give our inputs on what are the challenges we are facing. So we are more than happy to take on this challenge, but the cost of energy need to be at certain manageable, and also the policies and so forth need to be more transparent, and that we know what is coming. A lot of times manufacturing, we find the policy changes or certain impact of announcements are late. Then the industry has difficulty to manage it and try to forecast ahead because it is important we know what's ahead of us. You know, like when we're driving, we like to know what's ahead of us. Of course, occasionally we see a police stop. All right, we can adapt to it. Yeah. We wind down the window and say hello, Dato. You know, although they have no Dato. Yeah. So I think overall we have many challenges, and we think these challenges can only work with a collaboration between producers like TNB and the government, and then we can make this head on this SDG7 so that we can ride the wave. I think overall industries, we do not waste energy because we pay for it. You know, I always tell people, water or energy industries do not waste. We do not open the tap and leave it running because it's money down the drain. It's literally money down the drain, you know, and we are paying costs at a certain rate, unlike domestic users, you know. I always say this, especially regarding to water, that our rates are too low for our domestic users, and that waste becomes a part of the culture. So in the industry, we do not want to waste. Why waste? Because that hits our bottom line. So I think that's pretty much for my opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Stephen. Challenges, I like the part where you say that industry do not waste energy and water because it's literally money down the drain. But also it boils back to the issue of affordability. So to switch the question on affordability, I will have to turn to Dato Fazlur as the energy provider. Dato, from affordability point of view, how do we then ensure, having listened to these challenges and having taken note that, you know, probably domestic consumers are not as stringent when it comes to energy usage because they don't pay, unlike the industries, but how do we make sure that in our journey for transition, not industry, consumers, our household, we won't be affected or you know, kind of not sheltered, but how to ensure that we can manage it, affordability security, and at the same time sustainability?
Wow, difficult question. And I have to answer. No, just joking aside, I guess, yeah, I'd just like to pick a little bit on what Ms. Gan and Mr. Stephen actually mentioned just now. The first one is actually when we talk about how our energy costs compared to many others. Yeah, I mean, in terms of, we all know that petrol prices are actually quite heavily subsidized. In comparison, electricity costs, as we compare electricity costs in Malaysia and our regional neighbors, we're very competitive. And in terms of system performance, at a better level compared to our neighbors. Where our system performance is right now is also comparable to the system performances in developed countries, yeah, whereby they are paying even higher electricity costs. So I think this is one of those, I guess, challenges that we face in Malaysia in terms of transitioning, right? I think also Tuan Syed actually mentioned about, you know, where we do this transition, it has to be based on Malaysian model, right? I mean, you cannot cut and paste from any other country and actually follow and everything's okay. We have different starting points, and one of the starting points is where our energy costs is, right? So that as we look at the transition, yes, of course, there will be some significant amount of investments required, right? Moving away from fossil fuels towards new technology. Just now we heard from Uruguay actually shifting 94% to renewable energy in 10 years. Yeah? I mean, for us actually will be a significant shift from a lot of our coal and gas plants to renewable energy.
Oh.
Huge amount of investment shift. So I can't even start to imagine the kind of cost implications to the country. So I think this is something that has to be looked at very, very carefully. So we believe in Tenaga Nasional that this energy transition has to be in a responsible energy transition. Yeah. So whatever we do is actually is a just transition, responsible energy transition. So as we look at how we want to, I guess, decarbonize the system, the power generation, the grid, yeah, we're talking about a gradual process whereby new investments can be done at the right timing in terms of pricing so that the impact to the overall system is actually, as far as possible, mitigated, right? So that's important. And in our sustainability pathway, we talked about also looking at early retirement of some of our coal plants and repowering to new green technologies. These are things that we will be exploring. But of course, the whole economics, etc., will have to make sense. We have to also get the policymakers, the regulators consent as well in doing that. But as we do this energy transition, I think the affordability question has always to be in mind. Yeah, and for us, as we look at the various technologies, there are, you know, the carbon capture technologies, hydrogen technologies, and other form of technologies. So what we want to do is actually see which technologies cost little, as low for the emissions that we reduce. So we are looking at this to ensure that affordability is actually catered. So that's on the investment of the generation source. At the same time, we also have to tackle the customer end, because the supply side is one thing, shifting from fossil fuels to new technologies. We can do that. We have the time. We have to look at the right pricing, etc. But also at the customer end. So it is also important to empower and give customers the choice. Yeah? So as we transition to new energy sources, we're also looking at customers having that option as well. So in line with this, we also have this various, I think outside there you've seen some of the options that customers can put on rooftop solar. Yeah, so these are one of the things that we are pushing as well. Yeah, and this in some cases, depending on how your configuration of your house, your rooftop, the size of your solar panels and all that, you can actually save quite a significant amount of energy costs. Yeah, outside there you can actually 80%, 90% of the energy cost depending, right? So these are things that we're currently doing. And with our rooftop solar, our G-Sparks business, we also, we're targeting the various commercial and industrial customers, because at this point in time, as my friend Stephen actually mentioned, the industry and the commercial customers pay a lot in terms of energy costs, yeah? They are most motivated to actually look at these kind of options, right? So I think that's the the two sides of the coin, on the supply side and demand side. These are things that we are doing. But as I said also at the beginning earlier, that it doesn't. We have to actually get the energy literacy up. I think the point that Stephen mentioned just now, that sometimes you mentioned that water is so cheap as an example, right? I mean, sometimes the price signals with regards to resources, scarce resources, energy, etc., is actually important, because it becomes a culture, it becomes a behavior that people don't actually view some of these things as actually precious, and therefore need to do savings and all that. So this part of it, engaging and communicating and creating that awareness and energy literacy is important. And to this end, Tenaga is actually working on the Malaysian energy literacy program to engage various customer segments, civil society organizations, NGOs, associations, etc., so that this awareness starts to increase. A long process. Yes. The journey is not going to happen overnight. Yeah? Opinion is not going to change overnight, but it is something that has to be done. Yeah? It is something that has to start now as opposed to later. So I think in that respect, these are some of the things that we are doing to address this transition, and also bearing in mind always affordability, because we have to balance the trilemma of affordability, energy security, and sustainability. So that is always in mind. For Malaysia, I think particularly as Ms. Ayuni actually mentioned just now, that we're all very sensitive folk when it comes to price, when cost. We're all very sensitive, so naik sikit 10 sen dah bising lah kan. So I mean, these are things that's the nature of society, and I think we have to be conscious about that. But hopefully, as we move down this pathway, the next 28 years to 2050, etc., we hope that as awareness increases, we hope that these investments into the new green economy stimulates the economy, gets us out of this middle income track into a new kind of form of economy, and perhaps affluence actually comes in, and then at some point maybe in the future, the primary driver for energy choices will be very much on sustainability. But I think that's a journey that we all have to take. Yeah? So thank you.
Thank you, Dato. Escaping from the middle income trap, I think it's still a challenge that Malaysia is experiencing. It's a journey. And Dato, picking up Dato's point on price signal, I think Mr. Stephen, I would like to probe further, as a producer, as a manufacturer. What do you think, what are the policies, what are the enablers, in addition to what Dato has mentioned about his vision about affordability and balancing the security of supply and environmental sustainability? So as the manufacturer who have been doing a lot of business since, and having dealt with the government sector, having also communicated with various segments in the society, what are the enablers, in terms of policy, in terms of financing, primarily financing, because public financing will not be enough for this journey. It's a massive capital required. So what would be your suggestion, your idea to build up on the existing policies that we already have, and how to make it better?
Okay, I mean, there are a few policies that we have. I think in terms of the green technology financing scheme, I think Bank Negara also has a fund for $1 billion ringgit. There are also schemes like NEM and large scale schemes. For NEM, we have 1, 2, and 3.0. And we can see those schemes have taken off very well. I think there's, for NEM 3.0, there's no more quota especially. I think these are schemes that the government can encourage. If you look at companies, there, I know for our members, there are a lot more companies with solar panels on their roof. And that is a business that's doing well. I think a lot of solar panels suppliers very encouraged by that. And this helps because I know a particular member with even current energy prices, just because they have the solar panel, they are benefiting from the solar panel. So these are policies I think government should encourage, give more quota and make the, for example, the NEM more attractive. In terms of carbon emission, I think manufacturing is about 21%. We are the third. But one sector among manufacturing is transport. We transport our goods everywhere. I think what else can we do? What else the government can do is in terms of policy on the EV sector. The EV transport sector is something that we should encourage. I mean, I was in Jakarta last Thursday and Friday. I told them our fuel prices, and they convert 7,000 rupiah. They are paying 12,500 rupiah. Yeah, so they are paying 3-something ringgits. So he say, hey, good for you guys. I say, yes, it's good. We have this, and we thank the government for it. But on the other side, you look at the ringgit. Ringgit is at 4.5. And one of the reasons ringgit is at 4.5 is because of a high subsidies. Yeah, I mean, I go overseas, I feel the impact of the ringgit. But as an exporter, I get the benefits of the ringgit. Yeah. So I think in the EV sector is one the government should go all out, meaning that they should encourage, importation of EV. She talked about Norway. In Norway, they give amazing incentive for EV. You do not have to pay parking. You do not have to pay your toll. And car prices are subsidized for EV sector. Can you imagine? I mean, of course, we have car producers here, but for the EV sector, if you can encourage the usage of EV, not only on the consumer level, because a lot of us like to drive, yeah, we are so used to driving, but also on the transportation sector, because they are also high emission in terms of CO2. So if we can encourage EV, have a very clear policy and incentivize the EV sector, make it very good for them to convert. Yeah, I think the government has kills 2 birds with 1 stone. Our subsidies also reduce in the event of EV. If we can reduce this, imagine the subsidies that we can reduce. I think the last number I saw is like 30 billion or something for fuel prices. So if you can reduce those subsidies, encourage EV, and make transportation go full-fledged EV, I think it's a good benefit for the country, and it's also a cost, because at the end, cost is something based on whether it's electric or so forth. I think these are very good policies to have. And I was encouraged to see that TNB is going to build a lot of charging stations. Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I would like to. Anyone who drives an EV here today? Yeah. One. Anybody else? I think his major challenges is same like when we have with our handphone, is when I'm going to run out of battery. Yeah. So I think if we can have this EV distributed throughout the country, every 50 kilometers and so forth. My only request to TNB is don't charge it by the minute. Yeah, charge it by the power consumption, which is what we charge, we get paid at home. So I think those are the policies that we can have. I think then our, I don't know where our energy transition ranking is. Singapore is 21. I'm not sure where Malaysia is, but I'm sure we can improve based on that one sector.
Thank you. I'm gonna pick on your point and go further with Encik Malik and then to Ms. Gan, because Encik Malik introduced to us that Gentari is working, one of it is on green mobility. So in response to this suggestion, how could Gentari fit in this ecosystem? What are the probably other policy measures that you could also contribute?
Perhaps I can chip in a bit on the policy side. When we look into the 3 pillars of business, let's look into the renewable part first. I mentioned earlier about liberalization of market, of power market, Malaysia style, right? And this is important. Why? Because we will be able to develop potentially new business models, As what you mentioned just now, customer will have a choice, right, in the future. What if they have a choice of installing certain technology at their home, and then able to save, make some saving as well, to address the issue of affordability. So I believe through my power, they're currently looking on that, and I hope that we can find to some form of implementation soon. Why? Because it is so important to have that to support the energy transition with regards to clean energy growth. Whether we like it or not, part of the renewables will be a major mix in that power mix. Hence, and we have intermittency issues with renewables, and obviously with support of energy storage, whether it is lithium-ion based or any other forms of technology, there must be some form of enablers that will make it more affordable to ensure that we can able to supply renewables 24/7 in this case. So liberalization of market is important. With RE as well, I would say more open access or third-party access of the grid, I would say, working closely with TMB. Just to share our experience in India, we have RE operation in India. By doing that, we are able to provide customers who wants green energy, but may not have enough space in their facilities to install solar either on your roof or on your compound and so on. So by having an open access, the likes of Microsoft and so on, they'll be able to import direct green electrons and support their sustainability agenda. At the same time, able to contribute to the bigger development of renewable in those countries. So I think these are the two. In fact, TNB has experience in the market like UK and so on. Some of the learnings from those markets can be able to apply. In fact, we've been doing some form of advocacy. We're talking to ST, we're talking to KETSA, SEDA, sharing some of our experience in India and so on, and how we can help to learn from some of those markets to apply over here. Now, on the I would say residential or small and medium SME, to support what Stephen just mentioned just now, on the item of affordability. At Petronas, I think during the pandemic 2020, we launched a program called Homescape, where we developed a package for rooftop solar for our staff. We work with the installer as well as a financial partner. In that case was Maybank, and we come up with a package which is very competitive. So the idea is to ensure that whatever bills they're paying monthly, they will not be worse off. There'll be some savings, of course. That is through financial creativity, where you lengthen the tenure of the loan to 10 years and so on, and it works. About I think we got 1,000 sign up. We installed more than 4 megawatt in total, I would say, throughout the program. So, learning from this, I think, to ensure that we, Malaysian generally can able to enjoy affordable clean energy, there must be some form of support from the financing institution as well, with regards to different kind of financing, as well as perhaps exploring so-called zero capex program for residential. I know, there's a lot of risks with regard to that, but if there are some form of mechanism that allow customers to take that, I'm sure there'll be higher take-up. And I do hope that the quota NEM for residential should continue to ensure that at least a medium house owner able to enjoy more affordable clean energy for their house. I think I pause there and probably continue later.
Ms. Gan, maybe some thoughts on maybe fiscal instruments that can be applied here from other UNDP network experiences?
If you look at, specifically for Malaysia, obviously, we will have to look at our fossil fuel subsidy, which is a sensitive topic. I know in recent months we've been hearing that there may be a targeted subsidy schemes to be introduced. Perhaps this is targeted subsidies can be look at a different target population group and apply accordingly. That means we may be looking at possibility of a semi-regulated fossil fuel pricing. Based on income groups. Because after all, we still do not want to leave anyone behind. Obviously, we have the B40, or even you have some vulnerable groups that may not be able to access the energy. We also know there are some groups that are still haven't have a 24 hours electricity access in Malaysia. I mean, in very remote areas. So how do we ensure, the whole of society is able to, make the journey to clean transition without being left behind? Which is why I think the idea or the concept of target subsidies can be, more palatable and, for the general society, because we have been enjoying these kind of benefits for a very, very long time, for decades. For suddenly you want to just leave it off and then say, you pay everything on your own, I think that's something, even me, I don't think I can accept that as a citizen of Malaysia. So the only way is we have to do it in a gradual way, slowly, to wean off, the kind of the effect on our life system. So targeted subsidy is something can be considered, but for B40 group, perhaps we have to introduce a sort of like a social protection system, that can actually help them to buffer some of these energy cost implication. Because once the energy cost rises, getting higher, it has a whole value chain implication, because on food, on whatever that we buy, the products and services that goes with it. So that is something that I think the government and also all the stakeholders in the sector has to consider. If we really want to introduce a semi-regulated fuel pricing scheme or a targeted subsidies, how do we ensure all segments of the society can benefit from it?
Thank you, Ms. Gan. So we've covered challenges. We've now also talked about trilemma. We also talked about enablers, technology, financing. So the last question, the fourth round question, is on public and private collaboration. I would open the floor for, starting with Dato Fazlur, your thoughts on public and private collaboration.
I think, thanks again, Ms. Ayuni, and also the listening to all the feedback from my fellow panelists. I'm learning quite a lot as well. So no, but I think learning is part of this main this whole transition process. As I said at the beginning, no one entity, no one company, no one single country can do it on its own. So we believe that collaborating both with private as well as public sector is very important. Now, let me just give you an example. Just now, earlier I talked about the process of decarbonization of the power and the grid, etc., requires quite a bit of investments, right? Now, if Malaysia were to do it on its own, it's actually a very significant costs. Now, we have a region, the Southeast Asia countries in the region. Each of these countries have different natural resources. Malaysia, unlike Uruguay has a lot of wind, Malaysia tak banyak wind. We are at the equator, so not much in terms of wind, but mostly solar, right? But as you go further up the continent, the Southeast Asia, I think you start to see wind. We know that around Vietnam you have quite a bit of wind potential, as well as offshore wind potential. We know that in Laos there's a lot of hydro, and of course in Sarawak. So what's important here is that there's that collaboration whereby the energy sources, etc., can be actually interconnected. So we believe that one of the ways to actually solve this energy transition and also keep things, mitigate the costs factor, etc., is through these collaborations. At a country level, we're talking about interconnections, so that we can leverage on the resources across different countries. I know interconnection, we're talking about it quite a number of years, decades, but we believe that the time seems to be pointing towards now, because many of our neighboring countries have started to look at commitments on emissions reductions, which means a lot of investments in terms of the transition. Yeah, and we believe that it's time to actually to use that as a catalyst for collaboration. So that's at a country level. For at the corporate level, at the company level, certainly I think there's a lot of collaborations possible. I think we're also talking to Petronas, etc., to look at possibilities of doing things together. We know that certain things that we don't have. Petronas has certain things that they have, like when we talk about carbon capture, etc. I think these are things that assets that Petronas has, and these are things that we would like to explore whether it makes sense. So certainly in terms of collaboration, believe that this is actually the main thing. Many areas, green technologies, I mentioned carbon capture, storage, hydrogen production is another one. Yeah, we can produce green electrons, and Petronas has a value chain. So these are some of the areas that we probably can actually explore, and across, as we do our generation decarbonization of our generation fleet, working with technology partners, people who actually have the technology to help decarbonize. So these are some of the things that we believe is important. With regards to TMB, public and private sector, for example, on EVs, we have a lot of conversations with various ministries, agencies, to talk about certain things that, how can we help, look at, catalyzing the EV adoption. So part of the thing, if you saw outside, part of the things that we will be doing is actually we're happy to actually conduct studies, etc., to actually help the public sector to actually look at certain policies, research, etc., to actually help make those decisions. In fact, here we are sitting here in this ILSAS, which is part of the bigger education hub that we have in Putrajaya here, and it's also next door is a Uniten. Uniten has also formed I see my VC here. Uniten has formed the National Energy Center, and we'll be using that as a way to actually use our academics, our industrial experts, etc., to actually shape or actually do some research in this particular area and work together with the public sector as well. So I think that's something that we are doing already, yeah, and we'll continue to push this, and we hope that this will result in some fruitful outcomes. Thanks.
Thank you. So that wraps up the structured 4 rounds of questions, but we have also come to a question and A session. So I hope the panelists are all ready to hear questions. In the interest of time, however, we may take 1 or maybe 2 questions from the floor, from the audience, and we've already have 1 question to Encik Malik from the WebEx chat. So I'll begin the Q&A session with the audience in the floor. Please state your name, organization, and your question, and if directly to the panel, if you could. So could I see a show of hand if there's any question to the panelists? Yes, the lady in blue shawl.
Hello. Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon. I'd like to raise my question to Tuan Saleh Malik Faisal from Gentari regarding the capability building on this energy transition, on this ESG. What is Gentari doing to help to uplift the skill, the knowledge among the local Malaysian talent? And likewise, if anybody from the panelists can also share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, very interesting question. Trying to relate back our experience in 2019 when we started to acquire a company called M+ in India. I think M+ has been running well in India in the commercial industrial segment, providing mainly solar solutions in that. And through that, I think we built a team in Malaysia, supported by the team in India at that time. But just to recall, when Petronas also started solar way back in 2013 during the FIT and so on. But during that time, it's more on for us to learn and not to grow that as a business. So we do have some assets, but mainly for FIT. But I think when we acquire M+, when we want to grow new energy, I think the team in Malaysia has been developed, able to develop at least for the Malaysian market. And what we notice is that because this industry is new to Petronas, even for me, I came from different. I joined Petronas in 2018 from the e-mobility business and also automotive, right? So the skill sets that in Petronas is slightly different from this this energy transition. I would say in new energy, 80% of our team members are from the industry, not from oil and gas base, because we need to have different mindset as well with regards to dealing with this industry. Cost structure will be different, processes are different as well, technology is definitely be different, and obviously business model is more B2B and something can be B2C as well. So through that, having a more, I would say, people from industry in the team definitely help, and I think it's a strong integration within the team from the Petronas itself when we develop people in this. And surprisingly, I can share with you that there's a lot of talents outside Malaysia who wants to come back. Those people who are working in this clean energy industry in Singapore, even in Europe. So we do have a lot of, I would say, strong interest from Malaysians living abroad who wants to come back. They've been working in that, but since they are seeing more effort by Malaysia, by the Malaysian government to push clean energy, and there's a lot of interest to come back. So I believe the combination of local talents, talent from abroad, Malaysian, I think will be able to develop the required skill sets managing this energy transition.
Thank you. Another question, maybe from this side of the hall. Yes, gentleman up there. Please state your name, organization, and the question, please.
Thank you. My name is Mohamed from the Ministry of Rural Development. My question, I would like to get an opinion from Mr. Stephen regarding the, you said you love that government to encourage the electric vehicles, right? I was in MITI in 2003. At that time, the government already given some incentive to the automotive industry. At that time, we have 4 main players, national players. We have Kia, NASA, we have Produa and Proton at that time. We have 4 local players, and we have 8 foreign players, including BMW, Mercedes, Nissan, etc. So, as a small country, we have 12 manufacturing and assembly plants in Malaysia. No wonder we have 33 million cars registered in Malaysia. So just imagine if government going to introduce EV vehicle, what's going to happen to these 33 million cars? And what's going to happen to the supply chain of the parts and component industry? And what's going to happen to these petrol stations? And what's going to happen to the, selling of this petrol and diesels? So these are the challenges. So I need your view on this. Thank you.
Thank you. So replacement is a scary thought for Mr. Zakaria.
I think whether you do EV or you do petrol, I think one the minister will always question that 33 million cars. Okay, some of our cars have already been destroyed and so forth. Again, the car industry is a very sensitive industry. We have 2 major players, regardless of all the NASAs and all that. I think we have 2 major players. And they are significant contribution to the economy as well. But you have to weigh their contribution against the subsidies that we are giving. If you weigh that, you can see that. And government, government always has a cane as well. They have rules and regulations. So you can force car industries to bring on their hybrid technology. I mean, you look at the 2 major players, they do have through their parent companies in terms of the technology. Yeah? So one, I think regardless of whether we go EV or non-EV, there is going to be a lot of cars because it's a culture that we have, and it takes a challenge to change that culture. I mean, if you say you can compare to Indonesia, yeah, one of the first few words you learn in Indonesia before you go there is macet. Yeah, if you've been there, you know what macet means. Yeah, so every time I go to Indonesia, I come back, I say we are not so bad. Even with their fuel prices at that level, you'll be surprised that when I take Grab, it's very competitive over there. Yeah, so I think human being always can meet certain challenges. Of course, we have manufacturers, we have a lot of cars and so forth, but there are many ways to address this. Yeah? So something you have to weigh. You weigh against the subsidies, you again weigh against the players and so forth. There will be a transition to EV, regardless whether we like it or not. I think there is going to be a transition. So it's very important we have clear policies. And when you have clear policies, you have to also make it gradual, like what Ms. Gan said. You know, make it gradual. If let's say you want to go to EV, you tell the car manufacturers, hey, my friends, you have 3 years or 5 years. This is the roadmap that you have to do. Same with fuel subsidies that you want to take off. I mean, I would disagree if fuel subsidies go back. Tomorrow you announce. I think industry as a whole don't like this sudden announcements. They like to see things so that we can address this. So you want to take away fuel subsidies? Fine, but do it gradually. You want to go to EV? Fine. You know, give us a roadmap, then we can go. Same with the car manufacturers. They also can, if you give them a very clear roadmap, they can also plan ahead. I mean, in terms of, you talk about part manufacturers, the plastic part manufacturers are not going to change. Whether you drive an EV or non-EV, you are going to have plastics in your car. I mean, that's given. The steel is going to be there. What's going to reduce is in terms of emission, in terms of, at the end, we want to live in this world, we want to live our generation with something that's livable. I mean, again, I talk about my experience in Indonesia. They bring me to a seminar in Bogor, I have to give a seminar. It's supposed to be a very nice place, yeah? But you look out of the window, it's very hazy. You know, they have millions of cars there, but you look, it's very hazy. That's not somewhere I want to spend my holiday or I would want to live. So I think we have to balance this policy of our environment, our subsidies, and also in terms of the economy. As long as it's done in a very clear, transparent, and a planned manner, in a planned way, you know, given certain time frame, industries, consumers, we can manage it as long as it's very clear and planned. But if you do sudden policies, then huru-hara lah. We also pening, you know. I mean, we understand things like pandemic happens 1 in 100 years. That's fine. Nobody has seen the pandemic. Anybody who saw this, maybe Bill Gates saw it. Elon Musk, he wants to go to Mars, maybe because he's producing a lot of children, so he has to go to Mars, you know. But not all of us have opportunity to go to Mars, you know. That was a good joke, yeah? But it's true joke, you know, it's a true fact. But not all of us can go to Mars. So we have to have a balance, we have to clear. And I think Malaysians as a whole, we live in a very blessed country. We have a lot of good systems. As long as we can get a little bit of the politics and whatever not out of it, I think we can come out with very good path forward. Yeah, we can. I believe we can. We are not stupid. You know, we are actually a very we have a lot of resources. You know, although sometimes manufacturing we have funding and resource problem, but just listen to site. You say there's a lot of Malaysians outside of the country who want to come back. I mean, we are a very knowledgeable society. So I wouldn't say worry about too many cars or worry about that, a lot more traffic. You cannot beat it. But we can find other ways to, say, control traffic in KL. You know, maybe KL is something that we need to look targeted. Targeted meaning maybe tax those coming into the to KL, but make sure your public transport is there. So these are some things that we can work it. I don't believe you should say, oh, just because there's going to be too many cars, there's going to be no supplies. I don't think we should worry about that. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Stephen. So we also have 2 questions from the WebEx, so I will read both. First question is to Ms. Gan, and the second question will be to Dato Fazlur. So Ms. Gan, you mentioned just now about renewables, how Uruguay is a good case, success story about renewables, but there are also instances where renewables could be unreliable. So the question is, what would be our plan to combat this? And the other question to Dato Fazlur, what's your take on hydrogen? So what should the timeline be for Malaysia, and how can we produce hydrogen at a competitive cost efficiently? So Ms. Gan first.
So I suppose the question is talking about
Renewables.
a sustainable base load, right?
Yep.
So renewables, yes, obviously we need to have a diversified energy mix because we have to ensure there is a stable base load to the whole grid. So for Malaysia's context, we can't just change everything like Uruguay, to 95% everything on the RE. Obviously, we still need to make that gradual, like we say, gradual progression. And we do have, under the Malaysia Renewable Energy Roadmap is very clear. I think there's a target by 2030. We need to achieve by these, and then by 2035. So the question now is, we also have this aspiration that we want to achieve net zero emissions, as early as 2050. So whether, the target that we have set in the Malaysian Renewable Energy Action Plan or blueprint, does that take us forward to achieve the net zero carbon emissions as early as 2050 with the energy mix that we have projected? Perhaps we will need to, consider other forms of renewable energy mix like hydrogen. This is an emerging, energy source. But obviously, going big into hydrogen now is very high cost because it's a very expensive technology. I know China has gone into it, Japan has gone into it, but they are still doing it, pilot it as, provision area or even at the district area, district level. So Malaysia, if we really want to go into that, perhaps we need to seriously rethink and balance it, as shared by our colleagues from Petronas and TNB, solar is obviously now the most viable and cheapest renewable energy source that we can tap into. The other thing is perhaps another one we can consider is the biomass, because obviously we're still one of the largest palm oil producing countries in the world. Yeah.
If I may, while giving Dato Fazlur a few more minutes to think, I think reliability, as we do this transition, reliability is very important. I think Dato mentioned about it. For industry, it's I think other than affordability, reliability stays on the top because we cannot have our equipments, stopping and so forth because we have a lot of downtime. So I think as we transition to renewable energy and so forth, reliability is, I think, very, very important. I think recently we had a power outage. I would say I was very impressed with TNB because the turnaround to get power back was really good. I think we learned from our previous mistakes. Yeah? So as we go to renewable energy, we also need to make sure the policies are there. In terms of our performance right now, it's very good, international standards. Yeah? And I hope when we transition that we continue to have reliability, because places like California, I think they went to solar and they had reliability issues. So this is something that we should learn and make sure that transition happens, reliability is also there, as well as affordability.
Okay, so hydrogen. I think I'll just pick up from some of the comments earlier from Ms. Khan. I think when we talk about, and I think Stephen, you talk about reliability, I think, again, always remember that it's actually managing the trilemma, managing the reliability, the sustainability, and affordability. That's always going to be the primary kind of imperative for us. Now, when we talk about reliability, I think it's also very important to recognize that in Malaysia, I think the variable renewable energy alone cannot be actually enough. We need to have base load. Yeah, And if you look at the energy mix, I think as far as the policy today is actually to have diversified energy sources lah. So cannot just rely on just one type of fuel, but multiple types of fuel. And today I think we have the gas, the coal, the hydro, and the renewables. In the past, it's been oil, hydro, and as we move forward, this mix will change, yeah, and we will change towards new technology, renewables, green tech, which is actually more base load, yeah. So the base load that we're looking at potentially, I mean, hydrogen is not the only one lah, yeah. I wouldn't just put hydrogen as the only solution, but there are others. Things like carbon capture is also quite important. That actually can help reduce those emissions. Other technologies, of course, with renewables increasing, then energy storage becomes also quite important. So that actually can boost a little bit more in terms of renewables. There will be a lot more investment that needed in the grid for that purpose, but essentially it's the same to actually help strengthen the grid further. Others, we are always also open to other technologies that can come in the future. So I don't know, the most fantastic ones are fusion energy, etc. I mean, those we don't know. I mean, but we're not ruling out anything. We're not ruling out anything. We'll be observing those various technologies, and as they become what you call feasible, etc., then it's something that we adopt. So going to hydrogen, yes, hydrogen is actually one of those technologies. Green hydrogen is one of those technologies that we're looking at. If you look at the cost today, I think the current cost compared to what we are paying for coal and gas is probably 3 times more. Yeah. So as of today, hydrogen is a bit more expensive than the usual coal and gas. Yeah. But as we go forward, so how, as we look ahead to 2050, I mean, these prices could be actually reach certain level of close parity lah. Yeah. So it'll be close enough to actually make it in the money. Yeah. So I think in terms of the question of hydrogen, where do we think it is? Well, it is something that we need to get exposed sooner, just so that we understand the technology. But it's not going to be something that's going to replace things today lah, right? So it'll take a bit of time. Yeah. So as we gradually, it's always a gradual transition. Gradually transition the fleet of generation assets. Then at some point, when the price is actually right, then hydrogen will start to come in. Yeah. But thank you.
Perhaps I can just chime in a few minutes on that. I think the issue of the concern of the hydrogen prices is very valid now. But if you look at solar, for example, right, it was high before 10 years ago, and then when there's a take-up, there's some form of incentive that makes it available, then you can start to see the price reduce with bigger volume, bigger capacity, and so on. So perhaps there's a question whether there's somebody want to invest, or is there an off-taker that we're willing to pay the premium for that? So I think that will enable the hydrogen economy to grow. So I think from Malaysia perspective, there needs to be a study or with regards to the policy and what kind of incentive that needs to ensure that we can grow this small now and able to, as what Dato mentioned now, when the time is right, when the price maybe able to reach grid parity faster, then we can fully deploy in a bigger scale. Perhaps we could do like a sandbox or a pilot, like a zero carbon industrial park, for example, right, where parties like Petronas, TNB as a solution provider can work on providing solutions like renewables, hydrogen, even providing green mobility options, because everything will be green electrons flowing to the chargers that will provide green electrons to the EV itself. So it's a complete wheel-to-grid solutions. And we have customers, off-takers, manufacturing in the industrial park. So perhaps that could be an area that government can look into. Yes, it is a small scale. It's a pilot, or it's a sandbox. But there's a lot of learning can be done with that and can be scaled up further, to ensure that we can able to learn from that.
Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you to all our panelists for their insightful sharing on all the issues relating to energy transition. Now, once again, before we end the session, I would like to thank each and every one of you, not just for your presence today, but also for your continuous service in promoting Malaysia's low-carbon future through clean energy solutions. Now, to conclude our session today, in conclusion, what's important is the call for action is to collaborate, 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 because no man is an island, and this is a huge, mammoth task for a country like Malaysia to undertake. Now, with that, energy transition as a shared journey, because the journey, what's important in the journey is the people you travel it with. So the rest of us are going to travel down this journey together for quite a long while now. Now, with that, I thank all of the panelists. And over to you, Faik, for our next agenda. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Ayuni. Again, a round of applause for our panelists and moderator for today. To our panelists and moderator, you may return to your respective place for our next agenda. This is very true, right? Like what Ms. Ayuni mentioned just now, this is about a collaboration for the betterment of our future. Do you guys agree with that? Yes, yes. Do you guys see that it's very important to collaborate after this? This is not only private, public sector. It is everyone at home, kids, our parents, ourselves. This is a collaboration with everyone. And as what one of the panelists said, it is not feasible for us, all of us, to go to Mars, right? Like Elon Musk, can? So let us take care of our little blue planet together. Can you guys do this? All right. So that is our panelist session just now. Very interesting, very informative. So we are going to our next agenda of today's seminar. And this is a presentation with the title Public Role Towards Future of Clean Energy in Malaysia. So let's put our hands together to welcome Tuan Haji Technologist Abdul Razib Daud, Chief Executive Officer Suruhanjaya Tenaga. Please welcome.
Thank you. Siapa nama dia? Faiz. Thank you, Faiz. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, and good afternoon to all of you. I feel very tiny, standing down here, like big lecture hall. I'm not trying to lecture you all, but what I'm going to share with you, this is, what we always been doing, year in, year out, every year. What we call part of planning in within ministry, KETSA, as well as with Suruhanjaya Tenaga, together with single buyer, GSO, and together with TMB to a certain extent, and with EPU, with other ministry, or what we call Generation Development Plan, which normally we will release every year, but inshallah soon we will put up this plan in ST website that we will announce in due course. First of all, yang berbahagia Datuk Yatimah, Deputy DG from EPU, Datuk Fas, Tok Lan, aka Tok Lan, Datuk Wira Roslan, distinguished panelists, Ms. Khan, my good friend Stephen, no ICPT this round. Thanks to government. And Tuan Syed, Encik Shukri, not only he also sitting on our ST board member, ST board, and Dato Nasir, Jasmine, and I think I know most all of you here, Dato AJ. Okay, sorry if I miss you, I miss your name, but okay, in the interest of time, let me proceed with this. I've been given a topic of this public role towards the future of clean energy in Malaysia, but not so much of try to say what public should do, but actually what actually government have installed for industry and also public to a certain extent to respond to it in helping our country transition toward, I would say, cleaner energy, cleaner future energy. Next slide, please. Oh, I have to control myself, eh? Okay. Okay. Oh, okay, right. Okay, go. All right. Ups and down, and okay. Ada laser, ke? Ada laser, ke? Which one? Now I'm becoming a lecturer now, with the laser pointer and so on. But again, so briefly, I will talk very fast. I'm okay for Q&A. Are you okay with Q&A? I'm okay with Q&A. I also, so welcome for the people online. You got a few hundreds of people online, including my wife. Say hi. She asked me the link for the website. Said, go to tmb.com and you can find a link to it. But I mean, yeah. Okay, this is the agenda today. You know, the 12 mission plan, what I think you have known, the announcement made by Prime Minister. Okay, quickly we can go. All right, so basic on SDG. You have 17 altogether SDG, but today we're focusing on SDG number 7, which is affordable, clean energy. They didn't use cleaner, but they use clean energy to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. Let me check with Ms. Gan, UNDP. I think currently in the world, it's about 1.2 billion people who still have no access to energy. So about 1 in 7 people who don't have access. That's why this role, this objective, with 3 main KPI for SDG number 7, which is universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services, and to increase substantially the share of, we're talking about RE, in the global energy mix, to double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency, which I will touch a little bit on what we have policy on energy efficiency, or EE. So, so in the context of power sectors, this SDG goals also translate into increasing substantially the share of renewable energy in the global energy mix, of course, in Malaysia, in our context, which I will share with you shortly. So Energy Commission, as the regulator for not only electricity, as well as the pipe gas, we have responsibility to strike a very delicate balance between the industry and consumers to ensure universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services. And there will be next slide on Prime Minister announcement back then in, I think, September last year. September was that last year when he went to Parliament and he, what Yang Amat Berhormat Perdana Menteri announced our aspiration toward net zero GSG. So some people may confuse between carbon neutral, but we are sticking to this net zero GSG as reduction as early as 2050. I know Petronas using carbon neutral, right? You are, but as far as the government is concerned, the terminology that we use is net GSG net zero GSG by earliest by 2050. That was announced by the Prime Minister back in September last year, 2021. So subsequent to that, when government released this 12th Mission Plan, the book, the thick book, I think you can download from website. So if you go to those two chapters, 8 and 9, the government has introduced 3 themes, 4 policies enablers, and 14 game changers to ensure sustainable economic growth with more equitable distribution of opportunities and outcomes. So the 3 themes are as follows: resetting the economy, strengthening security, well-being, and inclusivity, and advancing sustainability. In Chapter 8, the goal is advancing green growth for sustainability and resilience. So under priority area A, the first strategy is moving toward a low-carbon nation. Malaysia has recently renewed our commitment to reduce the GHG emission intensity by 45% unconditionally. 45%, it's not 35 plus 10, or is it 35 plus 10? Unconditionally, we actually voluntarily commit to reduce about 40, this is talking about COP21. And of course, the net zero GHG earliest as 2050. So as power sector in the last year report on generation development plan, we have target to achieve, as Dato Sri Topa mentioned before in his speech, 31% of RE capacity from those RE resources by 2025, which is I will explain shortly. And I think Prime Minister also mentioned there will be no new coal plant will be built. Read my lips. There's no new coal. No new coal in future. Okay. Of course, we will venture into floating solar. I think we have built. I think we have few under construction, floating solar in Kelantan. We have big, about 60 megawatt in Kelantan under construction. Tasik Uban in Kelantan, the large scale solar in Kelantan. We have started waste to energy. I think KPKT, Kementerian Pembangunan, KPKT, Kementerian Pembangunan dan Kerajaan Tempatan. They in the midst of awarding is about 300 plus 330 megawatt of WTE. So that part of this 12th Mission Plan. Of course, in Chapter 9, the goal is enhancing energy sustainability and transforming the water sector, of course. Under priority area number 1, strategy A is aimed to enhancing the energy sector. In realizing this, which again, YB Dato Sri mentioned on impending release of NEP or Dasar Tenaga Negara, which is, I think, be patient. It will release soon. NEP on National Energy Policy or Dasar Tenaga Negara is mentioned there in the 12th Mission Plan. And enhancing electricity subsector. So this will be our responsibilities that we have to deliver. So the government is committed in creating a resilient electricity supply industry. We have plans in strengthening the electricity supply system in Sabah, enhancing the grid system, expanding rural electricity coverage, increasing RE, and in the installed capacity, and enhancing EE. Speaking of EE, I think a new legislation in the work. Inshallah, we will putting up a new bill around Undang on energy efficiency and conservation act in Parliament. Inshallah, planning in this October. Underway, which will regulate energy consumption by energy-intensive consumers in the industry as well as commercial sectors. So that was the 12th mission plan. All right. I think you are fully aware ST jurisdiction, which is Peninsular in Sabah, as well as under the Act, we look after only on power sector, as well as, of course, we have another Act, Akta Bekalan Gas, on pipe gas. So bear with me. I will focus on electricity or power, because energy is big. Energy is talking about, you know, primary energy and so on. But so today, my lecture is on power sector. All right. Okay. This was taken December last year. I think numbers have changed, but as December 2021 last year, you can see the installed capacity was 27 megawatt. So if you minus the maximum demand of 18,000, that's how you get the reserve margin of 43%, set the maths. I think today we have broken, this year we have broken this maximum demand. It's what, 19,183 megawatt. This was 24th of May, right? Okay, I got this memory is still strong. So that was been broken. So I think as far as the demand is concerned, we have gone back to the pre-COVID. I can say that. But Shan is not here, but I can say that we have gone back to the pre-COVID demand of 19,183 megawatt. Of course, the dominant fuel is gas and coal, with hydro 9%. Hydro meaning small, big and small, and solar of 2%. Of course, from sometime we do import from Thailand. We had, I think, expired agreement with LTM. We plan to renew the Laos, Thailand, Malaysia agreements. When this contract was still alive or still has not been expired, we did buy sometime from Laos, all the way from Laos through Thailand. That's why we have a 300 megawatt capacity to purchase energy from Laos. Then if you go to Sarawak, I think this figures was checked by my colleague from ACB, so you can take this figure. So the installed capacity was last year back in December was 5,626 megawatt. You can see that dominant mix of Sarawak is hydro, 62%, and they have local, I think, coal in Muka. They have local coal in Muka. It's about 20%, also gas, 18%. They have ample reserve margin of 31%. And on Sabah, you can test me, the MD for Sabah, they have broken the record. MD from Sabah was 25th of May. It was 1,050 something. More than 1,003. So this was last year MD. So they have broken that MD. So meaning that economy is doing well. You look at the Sabah as well. Then reserve margin Sabah of 20%. Sabah is dominant of gas. You can look at Sabah of 70% dependency on gas. And East Coast, of course, they have a few diesel unit in East Coast of Sabah other than gas. They don't have coal. We were planning to build a coal plant in Sabah, but we have to shelve that idea of building a coal plant in Sabah. So that is snapshot of energy mix or power mix in Malaysia, including Sarawak. You have heard about the panel talking about Trelima, but I will repeat the Trelima, but in different perspective maybe. The same thing, but in different tone. This was taken from the WEC. Ms. Gunn mentioned about index of energy transition. I don't have that index of transition, but I do have index on Trelima. I think this is, again, under UN, this World Energy Council, recognized by the UN. These are the definition of trilima by WEC. So if you let me read line word by word first on energy security. So energy security measures a nation capacity to meet not only today demand, also a future energy demand. As my good friend mentioned about reliable, they have to be reliable and withstand and bounce back swiftly. You know, talking about incident 27 of July, restoration of Tenaga, about 2.5 hours, swiftly from the shock, from minimal disruption of supplies. The dimension covers the effectiveness of management of domestic and external energy sources, as well as reliability and resilience of energy infrastructure. That the keyword. The keywords are reliability, resilience, and a bouncing back in rapid manner and so on. That definition of energy security. Equity. You're talking about access. Country ability to provide universal access. We scored high actually on this equity. I think Dato Sri mentioned about electrification, Peninsular electrification. We have achieved 99, correct me if I'm wrong, percent. Of course, lesser in Sabah and Sarawak. But I will show you the mark, how they actually rank Malaysia in energy trilima index. So on. So of course, sustainability, the energy system represent the transition, the word is still there, transition of the country energy system toward mitigating and avoiding potential environmental harms and climate change impact. The dimension focus on productivity and efficiency of generation, transmission, distribution, decarbonization, and air quality. So I think all of us here, we agree, we don't deny climate change, unlike former president of one big country. Again, I think you can proud of our rank, status of energy trilima. We are number 25 out of 127 countries being ranked in the world. We are number 25, but we are number, I think we are number one in South Asia, and we are number 2 in Asia, in terms of ranking of WC ranking of energy trilima, not energy transition, energy trilima. We are number 1 in Southeast Asia. If you can see the criteria, how they actually score Malaysia in terms of energy security, we score actually high. The highest actually energy equity in terms of accessibility, of electricity to the whole country. If you look at the energy equity, we score high on access to electricity, almost 100%. And thanks, the price, they have recognized the price. We scored high the price because our rate is very competitive. We scored high on the price, as well as the gasoline and diesel prices. We also scored high with the huge subsidy by the government. But in terms of security, not too bad. We also score 64.1 over 100. So how they assess security in terms of import independence, close to 100%. But in power sector, I can tell you that, of course, we purchase 100% coal from overseas. We buy from our neighbor country, Indonesia, about 64%, 65%. We purchase from Russia, South Africa, Australia, and so on. But the natural gas for our power sector, we mainly actually source from indigenous gas, from offshore Terengganu, as well as Joint Development Authority, JDA. But we have started, when we constructed the regas terminal, we have started buying a cargo, LNG cargo from overseas. We score very low on energy storage, of course. You don't hear any big project on energy storage. That's why we don't score high on energy storage. But important elements. A panelist mentioned about storage. is true. To mitigate the variability or intermittency of VRE, the particular RE, the characteristic of solar, so we need energy storage. If you have a lot of energy storage with solar, we may have score high on energy storage. That will increase the energy security. But if you look at on sustainability, the final energy intensity, we scored quite high. I don't know what, maybe 80% and so on. But of course, we score low on low carbon electricity generation. Because you can see that the mix, we have equal mix with coal and gas. You know the formula of coal, double up the CO2 emission compared to gas. But CO2 emission per capita, because of per capita income, we score high compared to other countries, maybe China or a big country like US and so on. Yeah? So that, the scoring. I think we have increased from last year. So the grade they gave us is BBC. It's not British Broadcasting Corporation, but it's a BBC. BBC. So to give you some insight, when we did, or we do a planning year in, year out, every year when we do a planning, these are the stringent criteria that we use before we produce the report, the generation development plan. So in terms of energy security, so those are the criteria that we use. For reliability, the probability that we use, what we call LOLE. I'm looking like a lecturer here, you know, telling you about LOLE. LOLE stands for a loss of load expectation. LOLE. 1 day per year. It may sound scary, you know. Are we actually designing a system that going to lose a completely blackout 1 day per year? If you look at this is just a probability. It might happen, because you have to balance between. You're not going to gold plate the system, so there is a potential, a risk that you will lose completely out, total blackout 1 day per year. But God forbid, na'uzubillah, it didn't happen. 1 day per year. Reserve margin, of course, you may see the numbers today is quite high, but we are gradually reducing the reserve margin to 20%. That's the rule that we set. You know, when within certain years, we're going to reduce the reserve margin 20%. Because higher reserve margin, we have to pay higher cost of generation. So lower reserve margin, but of course at the expense of energy security. Because when you have big reserve margin, you have a lot of spare capacity of power plant and so on. HHI, I can't pronounce this. This is German, Findel, yeah, HHI. But the lower the HHI, the better, because the more diversified you are. But the target is always below 0.5. So I think today we are about 0.4 plus HHI. We are achieving 0.5, that's the target. So it's very strict rules that we stick to it before we actually do the planning for the generation demand plan. On sustainability, of course, those are the target. 2030, 45% reduction, 2025, 2035, 60% reduction. Intensity, above, over GDP. Of course, we have target of capacity, installed capacity of 31%. For the whole country, for the peninsula, about 26%. On energy equity, of course, we want least cost of generation. Of course, now you can see the balancing act. How to balance between least cost and sustainability, and as well as energy security. in philosophy, a trilemma is a choice between three unfavorable options. This is, we're not talking about, we're not teaching philosophy today, but in philosophy, a choice between three unfavorable options. You have to choose between three unfavorable options. But in economics, I'm not an economist, I'm an engineer, but in economics, it is also known as impossible trinity, meaning a trade-off. You have to compromise, you have trade-off. You can't achieve everything together. Maybe ranking number one, you can Google, you can go down to WC. Maybe I think Norway or some Scandinavian country, they can achieve. But it's a trade-off between three goals. But in energy trilemma, require achieving all three goals, although within the parameters of particular whiches of interest within these three objectives. One of the panelists mentioned about competing objective. I think Dato Sri Topa mentioned about competing objective. They sometimes competing. Whether you want to bias toward sustainability at the expense of affordability or equity, or you want to go toward energy security at the expense of sustainability. So that, keep us awake every night. Not you all, people like me in Suruhanjaya Tenaga and Singapore as well, and Tenaga. So this interesting that we have to balance between three, sometimes can be a very competing objective. Okay. So this is what always, thing in our list, in what we call the challenges. It's solvable, something that can be solved, but it is a challenge that we have to face it. Take regulatory progression, policy for new technologies. Panelists mentioned about hydrogens, battery. I must admit that as a regulator in this country, we have to keep up with all these emerging or fast-changing technologies. Okay, we are working together with the ministry. I think MOSTI is looking at a hydrogen roadmap. Somebody can correct me. They are looking at hydrogen roadmap, MOSTI, and of course, I can share with you what we plan for battery storage in the system in our plan. Disruptive technology, rapid switching to new technologies. I think we can see that the new products, fuel cell and so on, especially a new breed of customer, what we call a prosumer. They are testing, they are applying, or they are installing a new type of technologies into the system. On the demand side management, the challenge is actually is distributed energy resources, DER. Now, we used to plan energy flow from a centralized big power plant one way to the load center or retail end. But with this emerging prosumer, consumer that not only consume, they also produce. So we have two ways of energy going in the reverse flow. So these are the challenges that we have to face. It's something that completely solvable. It's not that something that we can't solve, but something that we have to take into account when we do a planning for generation development plan. Of course, share of fuel mix, security of fuel supply and exposure to price fluctuation. I think you're all aware, energy crunch, energy cost crisis all over the world, which is I will share with you shortly that what we scan today on issue of energy, high-cost energy in other parts of the world, right? Not only in Malaysia, but other parts of the world. So this is repeating. What I think I've said this. These are the criteria that we use to make sure that what we plan for Peninsular Malaysia, even for Sabah, we have taken into consideration all these criteria to make sure we meet the objective of energy security. Okay. This is something that I've taken from my power report, a draft report. I think this is public domains information. I think somebody was asking about which type of model that's suitable for Malaysia. I think one of the panelists mentioned, I think Tuan Syed, if you look at this different model in different parts of the world, they have issues. Take example UK. Impacted by global market demand for gas and low winds. There was, I think, one incident in I think in England, in London, there was a low wind, so they have a big incident of a power outage, and I think they have renewed commitment on nuclear. I think you're all aware that at the beginning of green evolutions or revolution in UK, I think they discounted nuclear, but now they will revive nuclear as clean energy, not renewable energy. Nuclear is a clean energy. And they have to pay 5,000% higher prices for imported electricity to avoid blackout in July 2022. This is very recent, actually. I think something that we can learn from UK and our neighbor country down south was very volatile. Price of volatile gas price caused their retail companies to went under. There were few retail companies were set up that went under recently because of the too volatile wholesale price. And I think I just got WhatsApp from Tok Lan, Indonesia agreed to subsidize, but at the tune of 25 billion ringgit or what? Dollar to subsidize their electricity, energy. But Indonesia to halt gas export in 2020, this is a decision made by Indonesian government to stop exporting gas to Singapore by 2023. Australia, I think you still remember fresh in your mind, they suspended their national electricity market back in, I think, in June, a week in June, because of reliability issue. And, the customers face a supply gap. I think there was a warning, I think, in Queensland, in New South Wales, there was a warning impending brownout or outages. So the regulator have to suspend the wholesale market because issue on big outage of the coal plant. And in European, because of this war, Ukraine war, depleting gas supply due to Ukraine war and reverse, they actually try to start up their, mothball, mothball. They are the coal plant in Germany. I think few countries in Germany, they try to revive the coal plant in Germany. And EU increased wood pellet demand for biomass, a lot of it from forest clearing in US. Hungary assessing feasibility of switching from gas to wood burning by purchasing a stove in educational institutions. Now these are the it could be a setback. It could be a temporary setback for renewable or Green Deal in Europe or renewable energy effort in some part of the countries in UK, in Australia, in Europe. It's not to say that they're not going to something big wrong in renewable energy, but something happens in energy, space that make them tweak or rethink their model. This is something that we can learn from, lesson that we can learn from these various countries. All right. When, other than that security criteria, when we do the planning for Generation Development Plan, of course, we have to consider the target of energy efficiency. So under National Energy Efficiency Action Plan, we have those target of 52,233 gigawatt hours energy saving by 2025. And we also have to consider the penetration of EV car. Panelists mentioned about EV car, and of course, the emission intensity GDP target and so on. So these will be the input data or input parameters that we use when we do the planning. So these are the output. So by 2025, 31% of target RE capacity in Malaysia, and beyond that by 2040 is about 40%. For Peninsular alone, will be 26% 2025 and 32% 2040. So in absolute value, in Peninsular, in 2025, the RE capacity will increase to about 8,600 megawatt for Peninsular Malaysia to achieve 26% target. And a 420 megawatt of new RE capacity will be developed in Peninsular Malaysia by 2025, and additional about 2,400 by 2035. So those are the numbers. If you translate into percentage, from percentage, those are the absolute numbers for megawatt. Okay, I think you're familiar with all this. I think we have progress from FIT to NEDA, LSS, Steven mentioned about NEM, version 1 and 2 and 3, self-consumption, and recently we introduced a certificate, the GET. So I think we have progress. We are not doing too bad. As far as the progressing toward renewable energy, we have progressed from, back in 2000s. When was the FIT was introduced? Back in 20? FIT was 20? 2011. Yeah, see? Thank you, said our friend. Back from 2011, we have introduced this solar, feed-in tariff. To today, I think we have progress so much. But of course, we're not going to stop there. More to come. I mentioned about energy storage. So the plan is to introduce battery energy storage system in 2030. But of course, before we reach 2030, we will consider to introduce a pilot, some pilot project for the battery. And you can see that the dominant, after no new coal, so the transition toward low carbon will be gas. If you don't build coal plant, so the choice that we have is, of course, gas. Of course, with increasing target for renewable energy. So expiring coal capacity will be 2029 or earlier. Kappa will be earlier. The 2029 will be Janamanjong. Earlier will be Kappa, but the first big coal plant expiring will be 2029. So again, you can see the blue, the dark blue representing the gas plant will increase installed capacity from gas. Why we are doing all this? Because of this. Because of the COP21. So 45% intensity reduction by 2030. This is our pledge, as Dato Sri mentioned. We have pledges. Of course, beyond that, we're not going to stop up until 2030. We'll go beyond that, 2035, further reduction of 60%. I'm talking about the power sector. I'm not talking about the whole energy sector. This is excluding transport, industry, agriculture, and so on. This is talking about a power sector aiming to achieve 45% reduction by 2030 and beyond. Right? All right. Under low carbon mobility, there is a plan to achieve 15% EV car by 2030. As this is taken from low carbon mobility blueprint, and 10,000 charging, EV charging facilities by 2025. I mentioned about a new bill on EECA, as well as a new NIAP. We are studying for NIAP 2.0, for a new NIAP, when the current NIAP expiring in 2025. Of course. So these are the solvable challenges. These are challenges, but something that we can solve. The higher the RE in the system, and the more the industry decarbonize, meaning electrify. So these are the challenges that we are facing, that we have to solve in terms of site availability, feedstock, grid accessibility, stringent environmental assessment, public engagement and promotion, EV infrastructure, financing, public pressure, solar limit penetration. These are the list of challenges. I won't go into detail. In terms of equity, we are looking at all these challenges in terms of regulatory readiness, infrastructure investment, recovering from big infrastructure investment, financing, as well as a fuel price volatility, and so on. And I think you are aware that we have started IBR back in 2014. We're continuing with the IBR regime. Consistent and clear return, shield against uncontrollable swing, incentive for operational efficiency, and clear, transparent regulatory framework. These are the principles that we adhere to when we started IBR and continuing IBR. And we are leveraging on distributed energy resources and solar capacity. We allow non-PPA generator to sell their energy via NEDA platform. And we promote export of energy from rooftop solar at distribution site via NEM Nova scheme at system marginal price, SMP. And of course, competitive price tariff to attract business costs of doing business. I think when time comes, we will announce a new scheme for solar for a commercial and industrial customer. All right, I will conclude. In summary, in all of this, we have to get the right balance between all those three competing objectives. What we are trying to protect is you and me, the consumers, and of course the environment that we're protecting. We are protecting the consumers and the environment. Okay, we need a well-guided policy and regulation, a stable power system, a fair tariff, establish emerging technologies, a creation of new business model, reliable and resilient grid system, a prosumer experience, expectation of EV market development, we will enhance EE initiative, more electrification when industry start decarbonize. So all in all, we are embracing these changes. Of course, we're managing it with the pace and scale within our means, within our affordability, within, as Dato first mentioned about our starting point. The pace and scale will be determined by where we are today and where we are heading to 2050. I think with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Again, a round of applause for Tuan Haji Technologies Abdul Razib Daud, our CEO of Suruhanjaya Tenaga. Thank you so much for presenting. We might take one Q&A from the floor. You have this one curiosity that might kill the cat. Please raise up your hand. And Tuan Abdul Razib Daud up front here are willing to answer. Can we see any raise of hand? Yes. This shows our fellow participant here focus, Cik Razib. That's why she has question. Please.
Assalamualaikum Dato'. And I actually have two questions.
Okay, go ahead.
Number one is about the carbon tax. I think it was discussed in the 12th Mention Plan, but I just want to know, is the government serious on implementing carbon tax?
Okay. All right.
Whether the industrials are ready for the carbon tax, and wouldn't it be considered as a luxury to the industrial players, where rather than they shift the whole supply chain resources, embark and invest a lot towards green path, might as well they just pay the carbon tax, knowing that they even can gain maximize profitability out of that lah. All right, so that's question number one.
Your second question, please.
Second question is about targeted surcharge apply. I mean, for example, I think we know that this RE fund that is collected from energy users more than this consumption, whereby it's generalized to all in terms of the rate applied, which is, I think it's a 1.6%. So,
FIT fund.
Yeah, FIT fund. So, what if I don't know, is a suggestion, would government consider to apply it by targeted, meaning to say that what if we introduce a higher surcharge applied to the industrial players that pollute more, rather than to these industrial, rather these domestic or commercial that eventually pollute less? That's all my question. Thank you.
Let me answer the second question first. The second question, actually, when government started this FIT, I think just to provide a fund to subsidize a premium rate lah. I think you remember back then, the kilowatt hours was RM1 2 kupang, remember? RM1 20 sen. That was to fund the pioneer lah, the pioneer status of this solar. Back then 1 kilowatt was 15,000, betul? 15,000 back then, 15,000 kan, but now you can get 3,000-4,000. So those funds were used or still been used to fund those premium rate to encourage take-ups for the feed-in tariff. Not only solar, biomass, biogas, small hydro and so on. So different tariff. It's penalty for the polluter. It's not meant to penalize the polluter, but your idea is you need a scheme to, instead of one flat rate of 1.6%, you have to have different rate for different polluter. If you pollute more, you have to pay more. That's your idea. So maybe you address the first question. The first question was carbon tax. What I'm aware that government is looking in carbon tax as well as carbon trading. I think Bank Negara is studying with World Bank. They are looking at the feasibility or possibility of introducing a carbon tax. In CASA, same time, they are looking at carbon trading, a platform where you can trade carbon between, different organizations and so on. So the answer is work in progress on carbon tax and carbon trading. And your idea of, if you pollute more, you have to pay more, that could be used on the carbon tax maybe. Yeah. So those two questions.
All right, thank you again. I believe that's the time we have. Again, round of applause for Tuan Haji Technologist Abdul Razib Daud, CEO of Suruhanjaya Tenaga. Thank you very much for the very informative presentation. We do feel there is a lot more we wanted to hear from Encik Razib. We hope that we can see you in the future seminar. So before we end our seminar today, we would love to hear any feedback on today's event via our survey form. So this is the QR code. I hope everyone here can take out your phone, and to participants online joining us via WebEx, you are going to see this on your screen as well. Please take out your phone and just quickly scan this QR code up front. Don't be mistaken this with MySejahtera, although we haven't seen that app so much more anymore, right? So please, it's a very quick one, just a little feedback that we can know good and improvement things that we can do on our seminar. All in all, we are very, very much pleased to have everyone here. We very appreciate your kind to answer our feedback. I will leave you a couple minutes to quickly answer our feedback before we wrap up our seminar today. Alright, I hope everyone have answered our feedback form. So ladies and gentlemen, every high will end with buy. Every meeting will end with a separation. As for today's event, we have come to an end. A big thank you to everyone involved making this event a success. And again, a big round of applause for everyone here today and our participants loyally join us from WebEx. Let us continue to work together to achieve SDG7 for a journey towards energy transition for a better and brighter Malaysia. I am Faik Haikal, your MC for today, signing off. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.